It is time for Feast Week in college basketball, and also our guest, Rocco Miller. SoCon Fast Break starts now. Rocco, thanks so much for joining us here on SoCon Fast Break, man. We greatly appreciate it. We know you're on the road. You're busy doing all of your basketball stuff, college basketball analyst, and all the things that you've got going on with mid-major basketball, which we absolutely love. And that's why Darren and I, we wanted to start this podcast to give some more content opportunities for mid-major basketball, because we still think there's a void, Rocco.
There's always been a void. And I think, I look at college, maybe I'm a little bit old school, but I think it's important to share that Division I basketball is quality from top to bottom. Obviously, the big guys get all the attention on the major networks, as, they probably should. There's some elite players, a lot more future NBA players at that level. But I think a lot of those guys get their start, especially now in this transfer portal era, at these mid levels and even the lower levels. Even now the Division II level, we see so many quality Division II players and coaches now coming up. One of the stories I'm working on is the University of Denver, just knocked off Colorado State on the road. One of the great stories of last week nationally. That's 3 Division II starters and a Division II coach coming to a program. And so there's so many different ways you can win in college basketball. That's the great equalizer. That's what's made the SoCon so great over the years, whether it's a mixture of zones or combination of athletes that are in your footprint. There's just so many different great stories to tell, and way too many of them get buried, especially at this level.
Yeah, I would agree. And you've done a great job being very intentional about getting some of that content out from bracketeer.org, everything you're doing there. You're contributing with Field of 68 and then Basket Under Review. So tell me, how do you have time for all of this, Rocco? I don't understand it, man.
Yeah, sometimes I don't either. I don't really know how to say no very well. So that's also led to a lot of great things. So, first Field of 68's been a really great ride. 6 years ago, I think, is when we started, or maybe this is the 6th year. And, basically my bedrock for multiple decades has been forecasting and thinking about March Madness. I think that's the common college basketball fan, the way they want to think about the sport nationally. I understand, a good percentage of fans have their one team they love, and it's life or death. And I love that too. But if you want to look at the sport nationally, you have to always be thinking about March and how your team can be in position to play in that event. And so, Joe Lenardi, I give him a lot of credit. We've been friends now for years. But him creating this bracketology world in the late 90s, and now it's been going on for 3 decades. It gives fans something to look at throughout the season. If the season ended today, would we have a 2-bid SoCon? If we did, what would it look like? What would our seed be? What city could we be playing in? And so people like to fantasize about that even early in the season. And then as we get into January and February, it gets pretty real. Can a UC Irvine get in? And UC San Diego last year, or, Drake was certainly good enough last year. So those are some of the best stories in the sport, as if you can survive your non-conference with 1, 2, or maybe no losses, you really do have a chance to do that. And my other passion is just trying to understand how these 12 commissioners / athletic directors make all these decisions. So I've been obsessed with that. But then, that leads into all the scheduling work I do during the off season. And so I'm always trying to look at it as an all encompassing approach. And that, led me to Basket Under Review under Trilly Donovan. Just all the people he brought on are people that I spend all my time reading or listening to anyway. So, just honored to be a part of that in some small way. I try to just do a special article each week to highlight all levels of Division I.
We love that. And we certainly appreciate that as mid-major fans over here. Rocco, you talked obviously a little bit here about the NCAA tournament and obviously the fans really enjoying leading up to it. There's a real interest in it, obviously. Have you seen anybody so far in the Southern Conference? I know it's early, but is there anybody that you think can potentially continue to improve and be a team that could win a game in the NCAA tournament in the Southern Conference?
Yeah, well, I just think the Southern Conference in general, I mean, we saw each other on media day, so I don't think a lot has changed too much for the overall big picture. there's a couple mysteries. Like I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Ricky Bradley over at VMI.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think if everybody gets to full strength and starts figuring it out, Furman's right there in your backyard, a great example where they played very poorly to start the year. Somewhat surprised by that, but they also worked. A lot of those guys were banged up throughout the preseason, and sometimes it just takes a while to get into a rhythm. And opening the season the way they did, having to play High Point, having to play Troy. Those are tough games. And those teams were ready to punch them in the mouth. And it's just all about how you respond. And so, eventually Furman's going to hit their stride, I believe. Maybe that started yesterday with the win over Queens. You look at Chattanooga, they had a really brutal start themselves. They've also been trying to, I think a big part of Chattanooga is Mulholland in the middle. He was not healthy out of the gates. So just a lot of little nuances at each place. We touched on VMI. I think East Tennessee State, they might be the one that has started the best, but they even started with a shaky loss at Presbyterian. And so, we're just shaking through it. But I do think by the time league play starts, my projections probably haven't changed too much. Like ETSU, Furman, Chattanooga still look like probably the top three. And then you might get some really great stories from other places, like possibly a Western Carolina, possibly a Mercer, possibly even, we'll see. Like Greensboro's got 11 new guys. I watched them yesterday, and they're just going to get better every single game. And I think that's the best part about college basketball, not only in the SoCon, but at all these leagues is a coach told me the other day, every game is its own entity. And then once it's over, you adjust off of that and you create this next entity, and then you have to incorporate what that next opponent brings to the table. So all of these staffs and players are constantly just one game at a time. And guys like us get to judge it like on a larger scale, but that's the way they think. And that's why you see such crazy variance from week to week within each team.
That's right. And there's so many situations, Rocco, it seems like it's a jigsaw puzzle for some of these teams in trying to figure out the pieces. And I think there's certain teams that have all the pieces. They're just trying to put them all together. And there's some other teams in the SoCon that just have some pieces that are missing, and they might not ever be able to put the whole puzzle together. But I do also think that as I'm going through this, trying to find out more information about Ricky Bradley Jr. and his undisclosed injury, I don't know if it's harder to find that information or who is Trilly Donovan. I think, we're still trying to figure that out. Right? And now we know.
I think both are impossible.
Seriously.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Right. But you might have the inside track on Trilly Donovan with the work that you do with Basket Under Review.
My goodness. That we could do a whole show on that. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out. We were at we got back here. I'm at the hotel lobby right now. 9 of the 11 teams are staying here, including Greensboro. And we're at the lobby, and we had a welcome reception last night, and everybody was talking about that. Everybody had a different answer. It's like the most genius thing. I don't even think whoever he is, and I truly do not know who he is. Whoever he is probably couldn't even imagine what a world he's created. Cause now right. I'm in the Southeast right now. I was on the West Coast last week. I've been in the Northeast. It's the same conversation everywhere. It's hilarious.
I love it. We always used to joke around, either in staff meetings or just walking around the office when news would come out. We're like, who is this guy? Like, somebody's got to find out one of these days. And then, you like having guesses back and forth of like, well, can we connect this dot to that? Yeah. So anyway, it's
now
to
we
your
have,
point.
Oh man, it's even crazier too, because at the Final Four last year was also the big topic. And I go there for a whole week to spend time with coaches and start scheduling for next year. And we have like imposters now. So there's like was like this strange guy in a suit at one of the events. Nobody knew who he was. And it's like, is that Trilly? Is that Trilly? And then there was a different event where one coach was kind of pretending to be him, but he really wasn't. Like, it's just crazy. We got imposter syndrome now. But
that's hilarious.
Since nobody knows who he is, they don't even know what they're impersonating. So
that's right. Yeah.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild.
No doubt. All right. So, Rocco, you mentioned scheduling. I'm curious from your standpoint, because now scheduling seems to be taking on a different landscape, different format, whatever it might be. It's its own animal, so to speak. And the coaches, especially at the mid-major level, they consistently talk about it. And we're even hearing, people like Chris Caputo, George Washington talking about the scheduling challenges and all of that. What have you seen from your perspective, because you are so embedded in scheduling?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had the opportunity to work at all the levels in scheduling, and that all started like years ago, just trying to put at large team, if UNC Greensboro was there was a time there with Wes Miller where they were like at large level good. ETSU had teams like that, Furman as well, where that was the whole reason I got involved, is trying to figure out ways to get those teams opportunities. And my West connections, we have some really great basketball in the WCC with like St. Mary's is close to where I live, and all those Mountain West teams every year. Utah State's got a great program. So helping teams like that get connected for games, that's how I started. Now it's just after COVID, it turned into all 31 leagues. But I would say the biggest, like to Chris Caputo's point, the biggest problem in scheduling, I think, is fear of losing your job. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think there's 79 power schools, and, there's only a handful of Tom Izzo's, Bill Self, Coach Sampson. And of course, those guys get the limelight. So from a fan's perspective, you kind of think, okay, everybody else should be like them. Well, those guys are never getting fired. Unless there's like scandal or something unforeseen. Those guys are never getting fired. So they'll go out and play the games that we all want to see. Even North Carolina, to Hubert Davis's credit, like he's done a great job taking on some teams that a lot of Power Fives wouldn't play. And even now, Will Wade at NC State's playing everybody, which is awesome. He played UAB, and I'm about to go call UAB's game. But the majority it's like a fear of losing your job. So like, you know what? The net is letting us play 7 or whatever it is, 6, 7, 8 games against really bad, 300 plus teams. And we just blow them all out, 30 plus victories. If the net expects us to win by 25, we're constantly going up in net. We're never going backwards. And we feel very good with our athletes and whatever that we can dominate. Kind of like what Georgia was doing before they played this weekend. Like they played some really bad teams and beat a couple of them by 60. And now that they're getting rewarded for that. So I think it's a combination of the job security thing and then the net rewarding you for, they don't really have a governor on the blowouts. And I think that's a big problem because if you watch the game, which you guys do, and there's no difference in Georgia beating a bad team by 20 or by 70. It's just a win, but the computer looks at it differently.
Yeah. And are we putting too much in the net ranking?
I think so. Yeah. And it's not always about your net itself. It's about your opponent's net, which is,
yes.
Mm-hmm. And if I could keep everybody's head there, I think we'd be okay. I think in the last couple of years it shifted. So last year we had 7 new selection committee members, and I had never heard the word metrics used in some of the responses more than I did last year. And it really concerns me, because they do have 6 metrics available. The really popular one, which I loved before the NCAA took over, it's called wins above bubble, the WAB.
Yeah.
And in theory, it's a great tool because every game is worth X amount in gold. So if you beat a bad team, it's worth like a penny. If you beat an amazing team, it's worth like $1. Mm-hmm. And then every other result is somewhere in between a penny and $1. So incrementally, you're going to end up with a certain value at the end of the year. And if all things were equal, like you do that based on a Torvik or a KenPom model, again, not to get too in the weeds on the nerdy tools out there, but this is what the committee looks at. And it would be a fair system, I think. But what the NCAA did is they based that same math of the penny and the $1 example I gave, and they base it on the net. And that actually incrementally favors the bigger schools, because if the nets continue to go up, by the time let's just use the SEC, by the time those teams play each other, all of their nets are skyrocketed. So every time you win any game, doesn't matter if it's Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU, all of those games are worth like 50 cents to $1. Instead of, maybe LSU's like only a sub 500 team and it shouldn't be worth that much. So it skewed all the numbers towards of course, every change that's made at the NCAA. And I'm saying this from a mid-major heart here. It only favors the power schools. Otherwise they wouldn't adopt the policy. So they've got smart people in the room that are continuing to tweak. There's great like public relations answers for all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if you do the work like I do every week I have 20 categories I track. And to me, there's nothing more important than your record. Like, what was your record away from home? What was your record on neutral site? Those are very basic things to look at. You don't even need the metrics to tell who's better. And so that's what drives me nuts. Cause, UC Irvine, for example, led the nation in road wins. I think that's the hardest thing to do in college basketball, guys, is to win a road game. And they did it more than anybody. And they got like 0 consideration for inclusion. And so it's just, it's an exclusive party now for at-large bids, in a sad way.
Yeah, and to kind of follow up on that point, I mean, do you see this one changing it all for the better, in the near future? And secondly, is there something that you think that we could tweak a little bit? Because to your point, you look at like a UC Irvine or a Furman or a High Point, some of these mid-major programs that have built sustainable success. It's becoming harder and harder for them to go get good quad 2 or even quad 1 games for that matter. And then it puts them in a more difficult spot because they're not able to get the quality of opponent to be able to put themselves in the at-large category, or even if they win the league from a seeding perspective. Do you see anything here that is a short-term either solution or that could help some of these mid-major programs be able to go get more games? Because it has become so hard for these teams to schedule.
It would have to be, so there's two ways to answer it. One is, first of all, the NCAA's part of it. They would need to have a concerted effort. Maybe let's say, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is last year's first and second round was probably, we had a couple good games, like the UC San Diego versus Michigan game was excellent. Robert Morris flirted with Alabama for a long time. That was cool. But a lot of those games were not competitive, and even into the second round a little bit too. So that has to hurt the NCAA's bottom line. Like, it's all advertising. Like, they have to be making more money on those Cinderella type of games where you're pins and needle. You're not turning your TV off because you're about to watch one of the best upsets you've seen all year, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years. So, we did have a good run where St. Peter's made the run and Oral Roberts had a run, and there's a bunch of others, Fairleigh Dickinson. I think the tournament needs that. And so in order for them to try to balance out what they've already created for the power schools to get all this access is to start going back to looking at the records and, incentivizing teams to play on the road. Like, even the biggest teams, like Alabama with Nate Oates does a great job. They play a mid-major road team almost every year. They're playing in Kennesaw State's backyard. This year they went to North Dakota last year. So, teams will do it if you give them reason to. So there's one way to do it from their end. I think from the coach's end, I don't know. I'm pretty scared about that because like UC Irvine, for example, and High Point, like they call everybody every day. They call me every day, cause they're the ones stuck. And nobody will, and financially, like, especially Irvine in the UC system, they have a limited budget. So they actually do need a couple game checks to, operate it the way they want to operate. And nobody gave them a game check this year after what happened last year. And just, Russ being there for 15 years and being coach of the year so many times. So if you don't have to play them, why would you? Right. And now, even with these tournaments that we used to have those cool, like ESPN style 8-team tournaments where if like UC Irvine got into that or High Point got into that, well, okay, now they make a run to the finals. They'll get to play like an ACC team. Now they've turned those into 4-team brackets with exclusive power conference teams. And so even that access is gone. So it's really like shutting the mid-majors out at all levels of the season, not just the tournament, the preseason tournaments, any other opportunity. The last thing I want to add on that is, as you guys watch college basketball every year, and you would probably agree with me right away, these teams like High Point and Irvine, we'll just keep using those examples, and Furman even, they're really, really good, and our iron sharpens iron by March. And we just want to see what that looks like against a bigger team. And how many of these big teams just fall apart, especially in NIL, where a guy might not have got his check in February and all of a sudden they go from a tournament team to losing by 25, and I feel like that's leading to a lot of ugly results. So maybe if we had more of a mandate on, I don't think they can mandate which teams get in. I know like in football, they're doing group of 5, but something like that where we get like 4, if they're going to expand 8 bids, let's get 4 of those to non-power teams. And that would be great for ratings. Just have all those games be a non-power versus power.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, Rocco, are you in favor of NCAA tournament expansion? And if so, how big?
Well, the first answer is kind of, like everybody else on the surface, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because you want the tournament to be the tournament. Like the way,
exactly.
I think the genius of the tournament, I've worked in like full-time, business jobs, in San Francisco. I started with a tech company. And one of the coolest things at an office job is, especially, guys like us are big sports guys, but you could have like Jane in accounting. and she probably hasn't watched a basketball game all year. But that Monday after the bracket comes out, she'll come knocking on my door and be like, we got to print this bracket out, and I'm putting an hour on your calendar. We're going to go matchup by matchup. And it's just like, and you can times Jane in accounting by like millions of people in America. It just, there's something about the magic of that bracket coming out Sunday night, and then the office water cooler conversations between Monday and Wednesday. It's the great, like, I think that was the coolest thing about working in an office job, was those 3 days. And then of course being kind of like the expert in the office was fun.
Oh, that helps. Yes.
Yeah. But I think that's the magic of it, because now you've got like all these people that wouldn't watch this sport ever for any reason. You gave them a reason to turn that on and not even be at work on Thursday. So, that can never go away. If they mess that up, it's probably the biggest mistake in college sports history, in my opinion. So they can't mess that up. But if they're adding, what I've warmed up to a little bit is if they're just adding a few more playing games, fine. From an at-large pool standpoint, I'm fine with that. The thing I think the biggest problem is, and you guys might have saw, I put it out there on Twitter not long after we met in October, is it's really going to cut into the chances for a big upset, because now the 15s and 16s will all have to play play-ins, and even a couple of the 14s. So like Robert Morris last year, a perfect example. They would have had to play a play-in on, like, let's say they play a play-in on Tuesday. Let's say they win that play-in, but they're, that's exhausting. You got to play a 50-50 game. You win it. Then you go to whatever city next and you play Alabama. So the difference is Robert Morris had 5 days to get ready for Alabama and put in an amazing game plan and have a real chance to get that upset. Now you're 2 days to prepare plus travel.
That's right.
The odds of those happening are just diminishing, and plus the overall population, right? So right now in a standard bracket, our 13 through 16 seeds are all Cinderellas. So that's at least, and you have 16 seeds. So that's at least 18 teams that we can all, if we're all rooting for Cinderellas, we can root for 18 teams right now. Well, now with the new format, we're rooting for 9. So our chances as fans go down, and their chances of actually winning the game go down because of the preparation. So I strongly dislike that.
And I tell you, the bracket just fits on a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. And to your point, that's what we love, just being able to print that out and you've got it. And I get it with the play-in games that we have, now with the 68 teams. And if you're going to have it that way, even with 68, I still believe that an automatic qualifier should not be in the first 4. They should already be slated into the big bracket, so to speak, if that's how you want to define it.
Yeah, the complicated part about that is, so a lot of these leagues, especially on the lower levels, we'll just say like the Ohio Valley and the Northeast Conference, like some less funded leagues, that financial component is a really important deal for them to play in the first 4. Now, they all agree, though, if they have a really good team, so like UT Martin, for example, got off to an amazing start winning at UNLV and winning at Bradley this year, like maybe a team like that would not be a 16 seed and go right into the bracket. They don't want them in a playing game, but if it ends up being just a team that got hot in March and didn't have a great record, they would rather them go to the playing game. So that's the hard part. Even the leagues that are represented by these teams, because for the fans that don't know, that are listening to this, you get a full share if you win the opening round game. So that's how they're making the money work. And that's a huge deal. Like the year Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They had won the previous opening round game. And so they got, they played in 3 NCAA tournament games, which is 3 full shares. Something like that to the Northeast Conference is crazy important.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I still continue to joke when you talk about Fairleigh Dickinson, because I was assistant coach at Fairleigh Dickinson from 1993-94, so 1 year there. But I continue to joke that, I helped lay the foundation for Fairleigh Dickinson to be able to pull off that upset. Now, granted, it was 30 years later, but you had to start somewhere to building that foundation with Tom Green as the head coach there. All right, so Rocco, now switching gears a little bit more towards the SoCon and even some of the news that recently came out for the SoCon tournament and a 10-year extension there for the city of Asheville. And I think this is a smart move for the SoCon. Asheville does a great job hosting the tournament. And it gives the fans now something that they know for the next 10 years. It's a destination type of place for the SoCon. And I think a lot of these mid-major programs and conferences should look at these opportunities of having a place that they can go to year in and year out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's great. And I think the other end is, obviously with the city of Asheville still bouncing back from the hurricane.
Yes.
That's really important for them to guarantee themselves 10 more years of fans coming in for a big event like that. And when you do a conference tournament, you get like a week's worth of people visiting. So
Yes.
That's really important there. I agree. I would say across college basketball, the two best conference tournaments, at least in my opinion, at the high levels, the Big East tournament at the Garden, it's just special. Crazy things happen there. The atmosphere is unbelievable. And then on the mid-major level, I think Arch Madness is kind of what everybody strives to be. And I think the SoCon is as close to anyone to being at that Arch Madness level. When I talk to all the schools in the Valley or fans in the Valley, for them, it's like a family reunion, to where I know so-and-so who roots for Bradley. I see him once a year at Arch Madness, and hopefully Asheville's starting to create that type of environment where Furman fans are used to seeing the same ETSU or Chattanooga fans or UNC. And so that's what you want to build, just that atmosphere for, whether you're at the game or just at the restaurants or the surrounding spots, the hotels. That's what makes conference tournaments awesome. And I do need to get out to yours. It's unfortunate.
Yes.
Every year.
Come on, Rocco.
I know. I'm killing myself over it, honestly, because I love the SoCon. But it's always the same days as WCC, and they always need me there, so it's just a tough one.
Hey, well, you're a West Coast guy. We get it. Yeah. We understand. We know where your priorities are, right? We'll get you over here.
It's always a mistake, too, because we get St. Mary's Gonzaga every year, no matter. I could be somewhere else, and that game's still going to happen. So
I love it. All right. Also, for the past 2 years now, we've seen the SoCon ASUN Challenge. And again, I think mid-majors should do more of this as well, having these opportunities, even here in the non-conference, because it does give you an opportunity to play like opponents, get ready for conference scheduled. And right now, the SoCon is up 9-8 in this challenge with the ASUN. Still 2 games left to go. We've got Bellarmine at the Citadel, and that's actually tonight. And then you've got Central Arkansas at ETSU. Your thoughts in just terms of both of these conferences coming together and having a joint challenge like this? Obviously, we see it on the high major level, but I think more mid-majors should also do something like this, Rocco.
I think so, too. I think the biggest thing, especially coming from a scheduling point of view, is so many of these teams have a hard time getting home games. And, you see so many schedules, even in Conference USA, which is, a big football conference and with good basketball. They're playing all these non-Division I games to just get home games, and the fans aren't really into that. I don't turn them on, and I'm trying to learn about these teams because I can't learn anything when you're playing a non-Division I team. Everybody's going to play 15 to 25 minutes and whatever. It might be nice to see your friends at the game, but there's a million other things you probably should be doing. You watch a better game on TV is probably more interesting. So, the home games are the most important thing, because if you do play a D1 team from the ASUN, in SoCon's example, that's exciting. You had some really good matchups in this. Like you said, it's 9-8. I think that's worked out even closer than you might have predicted at the beginning.
Yes.
And then I think next year, it was mentioned when we were at Media Day, they'll likely go to a Big South Challenge, which makes sense. These are all just bus rides. Yeah, just do bus rides and get home, get everybody home games. And you need to get creative now to figure out how to get D1 home games at places like, Western Carolina and even at the Woffords of the world where, teams are scared to go in there.
Yeah. Do you see this as more and more of these mid-major conferences starting to do this as it's become harder to schedule, and obviously wanting to try to blend that we'd rather have a good game here than go play another non-1?
Yep. Yeah, I'm certainly encouraging it. I'm meeting more and more at the league level, as you saw there at the SoCon, to try to make sure that happens. And then there's other creative ideas down the road. I don't know how it's going to shake out or which leagues are going to jump on it first, but I think a lot of these preseason events, you can do them on campus though. It doesn't have to be at, we're playing here at a Division II school, but you can do them anywhere and create more revenue opportunities. As you know, I know there's still some institutions in the SoCon that are not fully NIL cooked or, you know, ready for the big changes there, but you really do need that to compete. And so even if you're bringing in $20,000 to $100,000 extra for your program, that's a big deal. That could be a starter at the SoCon level. So, I just have to be real about it because that's how the money's flowing right now. And
that's right.
And you have to get creative with it. And then if you need the home games, you can do both. So we are working, like, I probably shouldn't share the opponents, but we are working on a cool idea with the Citadel for next year where, 3 other teams will come in there. Citadel will get 2 home games out of it. And then everybody else will just be able to be in Charleston for a tournament and have that cool experience there. So, excited about that and want to continue to do that. And maybe we'll get VMI interested in something like that as well.
I love that. Again, a destination type of place, Charleston. And if you ever need to work on something here in Greenville, we've got a great city here
I love Greenville.
as well. Yes, come on. That's for certain.
Go.
All right. So we know you're in Jacksonville and you got to see UNCG get their first victory of the season, which is a little bit surprising based on what we've known historically with Mike Jones. But we started to see some players start maybe coming into their own. Justin Neely there, 16 points, 16 rebounds. Your thoughts on what you saw and that typical suffocating defense there in the second half for UNCG? And again, that's a staple of Mike Jones.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was a tale of two halves. Youngstown State, quality program. They're actually my pick to win the Horizon regular season this year. They could still do that. They have a lot of talent. They're built like a football team at Youngstown, just like the all physicality team in warm-ups. You're kind of watching these two teams warm up. Youngstown just looks older. Like 3 or 4 of those guys look like football players. And Greensboro has a lot of baby faces, you know, like KJ looks so young and Lillian looks young. And those guys are young. They are young. And I'm just like, man, how is this going to go down today? And it played out in the first half, kind of the way warm-ups looked, where Youngstown was clearly the dominant team. They were bringing it to Greensboro, but man, the way Greensboro rallied was so impressive. Like you said, they played the Mike Jones style of ball they want to play, controlling the glass, using, steals and turnovers to lead to points on the other end. So they didn't have to execute in the half court as much. I think that's where Greensboro got stuck in the mud, in the first half, was couldn't get anything going in the half court. So they figured out ways to get in transition, which paid off for them. And I think against a team like Youngstown, who doesn't use the shot clock much at all, you really do have a chance to overcome a 20-point deficit. Like if they played more like, I don't know, a slow tempo team out there, then that probably is impossible. So it was a perfect storm on both ends, but give Greensboro a lot of credit. The place got rocking too. I mean, it's a small gym and there's probably only 100 Greensboro fans, but I was actually interviewing at the end of the game. I had to interview William and Mary on Zoom for a future broadcast tomorrow. And, I'm behind the glass and the glass was shaking from the defense stance with the Greensboro section. So that was really cool. I'm like, this is a real like fun tournament here. We got a small game and you can feel the place bouncing. It was awesome.
I love it. Other performers that you've seen in the SoCon so far. Again, I know it's early, but Jaden Booth leading the SoCon in scoring right now at Samford. He seems to have made that transition from D2 to Division I seamlessly, and that's not uncommon, it seems, over the past several years here in the SoCon. And Alex Wilkins at Furman, freshman, just continues to showcase how good he is. Any other players that you've had your eye on so far early in this season?
I mean, so many of them are new, like we talked about at Media Day, that I'm trying to just absorb. I'm checking it. Like the ETSU thing is kind of wild right now. They're playing 11 guys and their top 2 scorers in the last game were both off the bench. Obviously it was a blowout game, but, Jalen Smith, I think eventually can become a big time playmaker. Maybe work his way into the starting lineup, over there at ETSU. I think Western Carolina is a team with a lot of upside with their size. But I just don't know yet, like who the alpha is going to be. They had a nice result in the Asheville, as you guys know, a local rivalry win. That was a big deal. That's where Cord Stansberry, I guess we should mention his name, 29 points in that one. So he can go off, but he's getting a lot of volume. He put up 18 shots and 10 free throws in that one. But they turned around and had a rough one at Lipscomb. So,
Yes.
and Stansbury was, a little bit more quiet there. So, yeah, it's more of a wait and see. I don't have one particular guy that I'm like for sure first, not even maybe the kid from Sanford you mentioned, Booth, but I don't know if they're, unless Bradley comes back. And I think some of these Furman guys, like that's the weird part is 3 of them were all conference preseason. But as you mentioned, none of them were our guy Wilkins that is the freshman and was the MVP of that Queens win last night. So
no doubt.
Yeah, a lot of balance.
There is, yes. And Furman seemed to kind of get right back against a win versus Ohio Christian and then just carry that over into that Queens victory, just very efficient from the offensive standpoint. And another team, though, I want to get your thoughts on, Rocco, Wofford. And obviously the chaos that happened, everything there with Dwight Perry being fired and Kevin Giltner being hired just a few weeks before the season started. And now just watching Wofford, this seems like a team that, again, it's very early, but it seems like Coach Giltner has done a great job being able to stabilize things. They're sitting there at 4-2. They just got a victory over North Florida. This Wofford team seems to be a team that might be figuring some things out.
Yeah, Kamari Holmes had 21 in that win, and they got 16 from the freshman Watley in that game as well. But I think, overall, based on their circumstances, first and foremost, they've done enough to weather the storm. Clearly, that early win against Milwaukee showed that Milwaukee's a quality program that's always in the race, in the horizon. And I think some big tests here are going to tell us more. I don't know that Bellarmine and North Florida are going to be that great this year. So they're kind of games you had to go win if you're Wofford and you're going to do something this year. Now they got two big road games this week at NKU and EKU. NKU just blew out a Central Michigan that I broadcasted here in Florida last week. Thoroughly impressed by the Norse in that effort. So I know they're up against a big test on Wednesday on the road. And then EKU's got a brand new remodeled arena. So I think it's only their second D1 game in there. So they'll probably have a pretty hostile environment on Saturday at EKU. So I think this is going to be a really, if they can just split this road trip, I don't care which one they get.
Yes.
That's going to be a good week for Wofford.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the teams that they did beat, as you talked about, Bellarmine and North Florida, at least they did go beat them, because how many times do we see, Rocco, that these teams lose?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Right. And Wofford's so fragile, too, based on the circumstances. So you could see that happening at any given night. But the more they win like this, now they've struggled. You got that non-Division I win in there, too, now. So you just need those confidence builders at such a fragile time to build some sort of foundation. And next month they got to go to more road games like Wichita, and they might be okay at Gardner-Webb, but still they're going to be tested some more.
Well, no, and I think to kind of some of the themes that we've talked about so far in the Southern Conference, no one's really been consistent outside of maybe an ETSU or even a Wofford. So to see them playing at the consistent level that they've played at so far, I think is really encouraging for them to weather that storm and to, hopefully set themselves up to be really hitting stride when conference season comes around, because I think inconsistency has really kind of been one of the themes of the Southern Conference through 6-7 games this year so far.
Yeah. And Rocco, I think we could probably say that for so many teams just across the country. Consistency right now. Again, people are trying to figure out this jigsaw puzzle.
Yep.
Well, the hard part is so many of these teams are, it's all newcomers with the portal. So it's hard to just come out of the gates on fire with all these new pieces. Like they're reacting, like the game of college basketball is a media timeout to media timeout game. So within the game, you got 4-minute segments, play out 5 times in the first half and 5 times in the second half, and then potentially overtime. And so even just within the game, you're constantly adjusting and reacting to moments. And if you're a portal based team where 7 of your top 8 or whatever are all new, I don't care how great the coach is. He's got to learn how that player responds to that situation.
Yes.
And the month of November and even into December is going to teach them how to do that. So you will get that's the beauty of league play, because as we get into league play, that stuff's going to mature on all levels. And plus those rotations will get more fine tuned as well. Like if teams are playing 11, 12 guys right now, they'll probably get that down to 8 or 9 in SoCon play, and it is that goes back to our overall conversation on the at-large bids. None of these teams are anywhere near a finished product, and we don't know that till February, and by then all the resumes are blown up. So.
Hey, everybody's in the crock. Yeah, everybody's in the crock pot right now.
Exactly.
They're cooking, they're baking, they're trying to figure everything out. Rocco, can't thank you enough, my friend. I know you're a busy man, and just remind everybody where they can get all of your great content.
Yeah, thanks. I think the best place, like day to day, is just on X/Twitter at Rocco Miller 8. I'm going to be focused on Jacksonville Classic here the next couple of days. I know everybody's got distractions with Maui, Atlantis, and players there on the big boy scale, but we're going to be down here watching the Spartans of Greensboro. So at Rocco Miller 8 on Twitter. My website is bracketeer.org. So as we get into bracketology season, we also have a couple of writers contributing this year. Continue to check back there. It's been great. And all the non-conference schedules are posted there too for an easy way to see what's coming next month. And then Basket Under Review, weekly. My weekly column is the teams of the week. And so I'm actually finishing that up right now. And like I said, Denver's big part of that, big win at Colorado State. And last but not least, Field of 68, we do a live mid-major show every Thursday. We're going to skip this week for Thanksgiving, but we'll be back next Thursday in the first week of December. And every week we do either a coach and a player or two head coaches. We had Troy right off their big win against San Diego State.
No doubt.
Just hours before they almost beat USC last week. Yeah. And we also had Iona's coach previewing the Paradise Jam. So we will have SoCon coaches on that show. It's live. We love doing that. And then I'll have the live bracketology show starting in January on there as well.
All right. Well, we're also going to have to get you back here on SoCon Fast Break once we get into conference games also, no doubt. And then one last question, though. What's going to be on the menu for the Miller household for Thanksgiving?
Man, that's a good question. I'm going over to a relative's house, and it's typically just turkey, stuffing, cranberry.
There you go. You can't go wrong with the tradition.
Nah.
Hey. Right?
No, and I got to eat. I have to eat fast because I have to fly to Vegas that night. We have another tournament starting Friday with Lehigh, Santa Barbara, and then Texas State versus Seattle. That's a semifinals on Friday, and we have championship on Saturday. So, man, this time of year is nuts.
Yes, feast week, as we said. This is what we love, though. A lot of college basketball going on. And Rocco, again, we appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much.
Anytime. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Rocco.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And remember, everybody, all you have to do is hit that follow or subscribe button, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, including the iHeartRadio app. And until next time, may all your jumpers hit nothing but the bottom of the net.